This is the Share a Voice podcast, presented by Look Left Marketing. In each episode, we talk to the smartest B2B leaders to tackle the most pressing marketing challenges. Here's your host, Look Left Senior Vice President, Jennifer Tanner.
I'm joined today by Story Tweedie-Yates, the Chief Marketing Officer at FusionAuth. Story's worked in cybersecurity for more than a decade, and she supports also founders as a messaging consultant. Welcome, Story.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Jennifer.
So recently we reconnected at Cybersecurity Marketing Con, where you led a really engaging practical workshop on using Gen AI and messaging. I'd love to dig into that topic a little further and share your insights with our listeners. So to start, why is it so hard to work on positioning and messaging for startups and specifically cybersecurity companies?
If you can imagine being plunked in a foreign land, right? It's not a country yet. It's just like some foreign place, like back in the days when new territories were just being discovered, right? That's kind of like what the positioning challenge is for a product marketing person or whoever's actually doing it, because there's no boundaries. There's no kind of country around it. There's either whatever ecosystem you're working with on the ground. And usually the founders are already there. So they know the most about that country, but you're really figuring everything out, right? And your challenge is to basically get other people to go visit it. And you don't know anything about it and nobody else knows anything about it, right? So that's from the perspective of the product marketer or the CMO or whoever's doing the positioning exercise. From the perspective of the founder, if you can imagine, you're already there. You know how the water tastes. You know where to get, which leaves are poisonous on the island or wherever you are. But you're so, I would say, consumed with those things on a day-to-day survival, like you do not have the mind space to even get close to figuring out how to get a whole other group of people to come there, right? You only know that these are poisonous and this is how the water tastes, which is very important to figuring this out. But so what the founder does bring to the table and is very valuable in, they know instinctively when the positioning is wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes it really hard, right? The person who's doing the positioning is in the middle of a foreign country and they don't know. They have to figure it out. And all the founder can really tell them is, no, that's wrong, no, that's wrong, no, that's wrong. So it can be very difficult to bridge that gap, let's say, with that big challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Also in your workshop, you mentioned that positioning is an exercise in decision-making, not wordplay. Can you expand on that a little?
When, you start talking about positioning with anybody, the first thing, especially when you're actually trying to do it, the first thing that comes to mind are like a million taglines. Everybody's just like, oh, the cloud solution that does X or whatever Y. And so everybody automatically goes to the tagline, goes to the messaging piece of it. And the way to actually get to that is not by just figuring out which word works best. The way to actually figure that out is to anchor yourself on two key pieces of information. So one, the ideal customer profile that you're trying to target, but then number two, a competitor or a competitive alternative that you can then anchor against so people know what to compare you against. People have some kind of a reference point for you. And so with those two key decisions, you can end up with very different outcomes. And it only matters whether the target audience actually knows what you're talking about when you're speaking to them with your positioning. That's the only thing really you should be caring about. But without that, it's very hard to come up with a tagline that's specific, that's clear. Otherwise, you just end up with like a whole bunch of generalizations and it's hard to narrow it down.
What role can Gen AI play in making this easier?
Yeah, so Gen AI is like the best brainstormer that you can have. I mean, I used to work with a lot of really amazing copywriters, and I think they're still really important and needed. And I probably could have done a much better job of setting the copywriter up for success if I had worked with ChatGPT in the beginning, because what you can do is put in your parameters basically for what you want it to come out with. And the way that I use ChatGPT for positioning specifically and just keeping it simple, like on the tagline, I use it to help brainstorm what I call snippets, which is just like a cool phrase that you like or a different way to describe this. And it just helps the creative process to be able to then give your stakeholders a bunch of variety versus getting stuck in like one narrow lane of things. So yeah, ChatGPT specifically is what I have been using for a few years now, actually. Yeah, just for brainstorming. It's amazing.
Any thoughts on prompts? Like, where should people start?
Yeah. So the prompts can be relatively simple, and the follow-up prompts are also the best part because it's super conversational, right? The
Yep.
value of the chat bot. So the first prompt that I would start with, just for example, for the tagline, I would start with, I need to create a tagline. It's 5 to 7 words long, and it needs to take into account or at least imply these 6 specific inputs. And then semicolon, and then you list out the inputs. So target ideal customer profile, I don't know, detection engineers, target competition, CrowdStrike, differentiation, better at 0-day detection, and you have there's 6 key prompts, and then you hit enter, and it gives you like an initial list. And then the fun part starts, which is like, make it more funny, make it more sassy, make it more whatever, and you can keep working it like that. And what's really nice is that I've found that sometimes I have success when after, like a few rounds of brainstorming, I'm like, take everything in this chat and narrow it down to the top things that I have asked you for. And it'll just remind you and bring it back to, and maybe give you like a few other different snippets to work with.
Yeah, that's so interesting. When you first started, did you have any like lessons learned or where you were figuring out maybe this didn't work or this did work that was kind of interesting?
I think that, it's only good as what you put in. And what I found after a while, especially again, just keeping it simple with the tagline, I found that ChatGPT is not creativity, even though I've been talking about brainstorming. It'll give you snippets based on what you put in. It's not going to expand your horizons. And what can happen is when you're using a methodology and you're trying to identify a pain and you've made all your right decisions, you keep, like, for example, and even in my last exercise with FusionAuth, I kept getting stuck on one pain point. And when I would check it with our ICP, they were like, yeah, that's not really the top thing that gets me to go to your website, basically. So what I actually had to do was I had to go back and do a whole other like word association focus group with some of the people in our ICP just to expand my focus. And then I took that into ChatGPT again, plus the pitch that the salesperson had already been doing for like 2 years. And then ChatGPT was serving me. So it's not going to get you out of a rut. Unfortunately, there's definitely like the human in the middle element, I would say, but it'll be your best friend once you've got the general direction you need to go in.
That's really interesting. And it leads into something else I wanted to ask, which is how do you know when you got the positioning right? And how do you go about validating it? You mentioned go into your ICP as one way. I'm sure the founder wants to weigh in, but if you could expand on that, it'd be cool.
Yeah, for sure. So I think like half of a positioning exercise and what lots of people I think realize when they're in it is half of it is it's a soft skills sport because everybody has to align around your message and they have to feel like they've also been included in the process because they have a stake in the business and they have a lot of expertise around that part of the business that they need to be able to be included in the process. And so success looks like setting up a scenario where by the time you have something finalized, people feel that they have been included in the process and they feel okay that even though maybe it's not a tagline they chose, that's the one they're going with because they were asked. So that's number one in terms of success for you and like your career is you got to play the soft skills game. The second thing in terms of success is more of in line of probably what most people would expect, which is if you have enough traffic on your site, A/B test, right? A/B test the different variations that you have, and that'll come up with your answer. So like with FusionAuth, we had 2 taglines that we all liked the best. I had my favorite, everybody else had their favorites, and it was just 2 that we narrowed it down to. We A/B tested, and the winner came out. So Auth So Modern, you can download it. I didn't know that would be the winner, and that's what the people on the website said. So that's the like most ideal scenario is if you can just test it in the end.
That's awesome. So if people wanted to get started today, what action should they take?
You don't always need to go through like an entire positioning exercise. And so I think it's helpful for people to know whether now is the time or not. I would describe positioning challenges in terms of 4 different categories. So the first one is just you just don't have it. It's non-existent. And then the question is what you had previously working okay enough to get you by in the case that there are other priorities. Sometimes there are other priorities. You have to build an organization. You have to hire people. You have to get growth marketing going, whatever it is. So that's the number one thing. Non-existent. Do you need it? Do you not need it? You got to decide based on priorities. So the other three, if you're struggling with the challenge of just urgency, you have a message, but people aren't feeling an urgent need to act, I would say that has to do with the research you've done on your ICP. You need to start getting into their pains. You need to start understanding their true alternatives, and you need to start brainstorming how different ways of describing your offering match with people. I'll give you an example. So Auth So Modern, you can download it. So downloading FusionAuth, that is what our engineers just kept coming back to. They kept coming back to it over and over again because we did focus groups with them and figured out, like, how would you describe this? Or what's the real benefit? They just kept coming back to that. It means 10 things in 3 words, right? If people don't have the urgency, do a little more pointed research with your ICP. If you're just having trouble boiling down the value, which is like the third thing, if you're having trouble getting it into 5 words, you just need to use AI and get a tagline going, get some snippets, put them together, come up with some ideas there. And the very last thing is, if you just don't know which deliverable to, this is like kind of the 4th symptom of lack of positioning, is if you don't know what deliverable to create and everybody's asking you all the time and you've made so many and you don't know if they're enough, you just need to define a specific bill of materials, which the one that I use is a tagline, boilerplate, which is like your core message, the pitch, the sales pitch, some proof points, things that have to be true in order for your tagline to even make sense. It's not the whole thing, but define your bill of materials. That's a good place to start. So yeah, just figure out like which of these problems you're having, and those are the directions I would go in if you're having any one of those particular challenges.
Amazing. This has been great. Any last words to share?
I would say your founder is your best ally and also the one who's most likely to scuttle anything, but be mindful of where they're coming from and use their input constructively. Don't block them out of the process. Don't not take their input genuinely and authentically. Just understand where they're coming from. Put yourself in their shoes and how they're trying to run the business, and I guarantee everything else will run smoother. They want to help you. They do. But like I said at the beginning, like, their best tool for you is they know what wrong looks like. So use it. Don't get too down about the fact that they told you 5 times, no, they don't like it. That's okay.
Awesome. Where can people find you if they want to follow?
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best place.
Great. This has been excellent. Thank you so much for your time today, Story.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This has been the Share a Voice podcast, presented by Look Left Marketing. Subscribe today at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more B2B marketing insight, visit us at lookleftmarketing.com.